Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Swapnil Joglekar. Let's take a look at the stories for the day. Amid the ongoing push to introduce electric vehicles on Indian roads, one important factor seems to have taken a backseat. The fact that electric vehicles are way more expensive than the traditional combustion engine vehicles. Maruti Suzuki chairman R.C. Bhargava has now appealed to the Indian government to incentivize alternative technologies such as hybrid, CNG, biogas and ethanol for small and affordable cars. He has made a strong pitch to the government with the belief that a sizable proportion of Indian consumers need an alternative to the costly electric vehicles. So as India tries to meet ambitious clean mobility goals, are low-cost hybrids the solution that the Indian car market needs? Let us find out.
Maruti Suzuki chairman R.C. Bhargava believes that if a company wants to succeed, it must keep an ear to the ground and know what the consumer wants. 88-year-old Bhargava, who at the helm of Maruti Suzuki helped make cars affordable for millions of middle-class Indians, has now appealed to the government to incentivize alternative technology for small cars. And he is dead set against blindly replicating the Western model when it comes to EV adoption. But why focus on small cars? After all, the market share of cars priced below 5 lakh rupees has shrunk from 25.8% in FY19 to just 10.3% in FY22, while the market for cars under 7.5 lakh rupees has shrunk from 60% to 43% over the same period. On the other hand, sales of pricier SUVs have been in the fast lane for some time now. Undeterred, Bhargava says that sales of small cars priced below 7.5 lakh rupees will continue to grow for a long time to come. His rationale for the projection is that over 200 million two-wheeler customers are waiting to upgrade to cars. Also, Bhargava says that a substantial increase in the price of such small cars has forced thousands of would-be buyers to shelve their plans in recent times. But if India wants to meet its ambitious clean mobility goals and 2070 emissions targets, the first car these 200 million customers buy can't be powered by internal combustion engines. Bhargava has the answer. There are two markets in India. There is what he calls the Bharat market for affordable small cars and another one for bigger cars with 20 to 25 lakh rupees price tags. The challenge then is to meet the needs of the former because the current cost of electric cars would be double that of ICE cars. An EV with a 12 lakh rupees tag would not be affordable for most middle class buyers. Bhargava's solution is alternative technologies. At present, the price of a hybrid car is around 4 lakh rupees more than an ICE-only car. But Bhargava says that a reduction in the goods and services tax, as in the case of electric cars, would bring down their price to affordable levels. While the cost of hybrids is higher than ICE cars, it is still lower compared to EVs. Also, hybrids may be best suited for Indian conditions as they don't require charging infrastructure. But EVs attract a GST of 5%, while hybrids attract a much higher 43% GST. India recorded sales of 115,032 hybrids in FY22, which is just 4.2% of the 2.7 million passenger vehicles sold. Still, promoting hybrids might be the right solution for pushing EV adoption in India. Nomura Research Institute sees the share of hybrids in total PV sales doubling in FY25. In 3 or 4 years, they may become affordable, backed by Japanese car makers. But earlier attempts to popularize hybrids in India had failed in the absence of policy support and incentives. So, is GST rate parity between hybrids and EVs needed?
the EV market, the infrastructure is yet to develop, and Indian consumers being price sensitive, they would prefer hybrid vehicles, or they would try to jump towards hybrid vehicles. Till there is a proper EV infrastructure in place. So, I personally believe there should be a rate cut with respect to GSTs for hybrids, and that will incentivize consumers towards a move towards hybrid vehicles. And then later on, when the EV infrastructure is quite developed, then we could target EV vehicles. Low cost hybrids are the solution, but they are the temporary solution. They are not the permanent solution, because as per the CO2 emission norms, everyone needs to move towards the EVs. But at this point, hybrid cost models are the right way to approach towards move towards EVs over a point of time. So if you see ethanol or biogas, they reduce emissions by around 30-40%. And if you see, Brazil alongside with India are two of the highest, producers of sugarcane or sugar, and from which, you get ethanol as an alternative fuel. And India, of late, if you see the policies, the policies state that you can produce and export ethanol to a higher extent. And India could use ethanol over a period of time for its own EVs, for its own hybrid models. Ethanol-based hybrids could be an alternative model, at least for the short run. And by short run, I would say around 3 to 5 years approx.
Maruti Suzuki is not the only car maker pitching for hybrids. Honda Cars India also says that lowering taxes on hybrids can speed up EV adoption in India. So, is this more of a strategy for Maruti to catch up with its peers in EV technology? Maruti Suzuki and Toyota have put their weight behind hybrid technology and even received a favorable market response. Unlike in the case of Mahindra & Mahindra and Tata, fully electric cars from Maruti and Toyota will not hit the market before 2025. Hybrids appear to be a good stepping stone in India's transition from ICE cars to EVs, especially till external charging infrastructure catches up. The ball is now in the government's court.
While India is still testing the waters, in neighboring China, the electric vehicle market is booming. China is the largest EV market in the world, accounting for 53% of global sales last year. But its real estate bubble is finally bursting. People are hitting the roads in protest, while the government is trying hard to douse the flames, using a mixture of crackdown and incentives. Our next report offers an insight into the brewing crisis in China.
Houses are for living in, not for speculation. Chinese President Xi Jinping has repeated this line quite often in the last 6 years. He had said this while addressing the 19th Party Congress in 2017. And now, as Xi is set to seek a nod for an unprecedented third term from the 20th Party Congress in a few months from now, he is witnessing the unfolding of his worst fears, a huge crisis in the country's real estate sector. A 20-year-long real estate boom, fueled by proceeds from pre-sold homes and debt, has made Chinese property the biggest single asset class in the world, worth more than a staggering $50 trillion. In August 2020, China issued guidelines limiting how much developers could borrow in order to force them to deleverage. The measures, called 3 red lines, shut off credit to some developers, setting in motion a series of defaults. Xi's clampdown on skyrocketing property prices meant that top 9 real estate tycoons have lost $79 billion of wealth since 2020. The erosion in their fortunes is symbolic of the crisis that has engulfed China's real estate sector, an industry that represents about 70% of the country's household wealth and makes up as much as 30% of its GDP. China's Evergrande Group, which racked up $305 billion of liabilities to become the world's most indebted property developer, was the biggest casualty. Evergrande defaulted in December last year. In the last 1.5 years, Chinese developers, including top ones like Kaisa Group, Shimao Group, and Sunac China, have defaulted on at least $18 billion of offshore dollar bonds and $2.5 billion worth onshore debt. China's home prices and sales have fallen for record 11 months in a row as consumer confidence in the property market weakens. This has made it more difficult for developers to pay for construction, given pre-sales make up to 90% of all property sales in China. What has exacerbated the crisis is the refusal of tens of thousands of home buyers to pay mortgages for unfinished construction projects. According to Nomura, between 2013 and 2020, only about 60% of the homes that were pre-sold by developers were actually delivered. In a matter of only 2 months, the boycotts have spread to at least 320 projects in 99 cities, making it perhaps the largest mortgage protest in China's history. Banks in China have about $9 trillion of exposure to the property sector, of which $5.3 trillion is in the form of mortgage loans. Analysts estimate that as much as $291 billion of loans could be impacted by the boycotts. Contrary to the 2007 US subprime mortgage crisis, when money was loaned to high-risk borrowers who later defaulted, many in China are capable of paying but choose not to.
Overall debt in China has gone up tremendously, especially since the global financial crisis of 2008. So in 2008, China's total debt to GDP was about 140%, which by itself is, you could argue, high. Today, it's about 265%. Okay, around 150, 160% is corporate debt. There are also vulnerabilities in the banking system, right? You've heard of, 2 years ago, we saw small banks in China starting to fail. So as I said, the vulnerabilities for China are big, even for the world are quite large. Whether we like it or not, we rely a lot on China. China is a strong country. It has $3 trillion of reserves. It has, even while we say that, it's struggling to shift towards high tech, and we're not sure as to all this money going into R&D, is it really translating into something? But the reality is that the investments going into China, even today, into high-tech industry from Europe, even from US, is very, very high. It's not stopped. I would say that if you extrapolate the vulnerabilities to say that a collapse is very likely, chances are that's not correct. Of course, there are risks. Who the hell knows what's going to happen? And we don't know a lot about China, to be honest. But I would be very surprised and shocked if we actually saw a complete collapse.
China has meanwhile stepped in to help developers facing a cash crunch by offering $29 billion in special loans through policy banks. On Wednesday, it announced an economic stimulus package which includes $44 billion that state policy banks can invest in infrastructure projects. Research from Capital Economics, however, estimates that developers need $444 billion to complete halted projects. The stimulus packages provide relief to local governments, which are responsible for infrastructure spending. As the housing crisis deepened, demand from developers to buy land has collapsed. As a result, local governments' income from land sales, a key revenue source, plummeted 32% this year.
They've been pumping in debt to try and hold up the economy. One of the reasons why China has been very reluctant to come in completely after Evergrande happened, they've been reluctant to come in and do a wholesale bailout of the real estate ecosystem. And the reason for that, the only way they can do that is by increasing the debt even further. Now, you can't run the circus forever of just simply pumping debt to try and hold up your economy. At some stage, this house of cards can collapse. I think what China is doing is probably the right thing, allowing some pain to come through rather than trying to pump in money the first sign of any trouble coming up, right? There is excesses in the system. Those excesses have to come down over a period of time. There is no other choice.
While a complete collapse of either China's economy or its banking system is not on the cards, the property bubble popped by the government is unlikely to see a soft landing.
China is ramping up financing support for its troubled real estate sector, and another bailout may also be on the cards. Meanwhile, back home, a slew of big announcements may be on the cards, as Mukesh Ambani-led Reliance Industries is set to hold its 45th annual general meeting on Monday. The company may announce its plans for 5G rollout, green hydrogen, solar power, and the retail business. Our next report takes stock of it all.
One of the most awaited annual general meetings of India Inc., that of Reliance Industries, will be held on Monday, August 29, announcing the launch of JioPhone with refundable deposit in its AGM in July 2017 to laying out new energy blueprint with 75,000 crore rupee investment in the one held in 2021. RIL is known for making big bang announcements in its AGMs, and this time could be no different. The Mukesh Ambani-led company's AGM could yet again spell out details on how the company plans to embark on the journey of new energy as well as 5G technology. Besides, the Ambanis' plan to unleash growth potential of Reliance Retail would also be keenly watched by market participants and investors alike.
With the 5G coming in, this could be, I think, a big announcement to be talked about. That in Jio platforms, the commercial success which they have seen with the mobility business could now be seen from the enterprise business after the 5G coming in. Because 5G is expected to drive the IoT business, 5G is expected to drive the cloud and computing business along with. And as a result of which, I think most of the enterprises are expected to get integrated. So this is one major area of announcement I think would be expected from the Jio platform activity. And in the retail platform, the business I think is largely driven by different brands and the acquisitions and the strategic investment that they've done in different businesses across I think verticals within the retail segment. Now, these are having a potential of generating a sustainable higher amount of revenue and the growth along with the profits, because having your own brands, definitely it is understood clearly that you are going to have an edge as far as I think the profitability is concerned. So that's an area where I think one could possibly throw more light in the AGM.
Analysts, however, believe that despite the two segments seeing tremendous strength, Mukesh Ambani may not give detailed timeline regarding their stock market listing. What investors could see, though, is an update on the progress made on the same, they say. Experts believe the chairman may give specifics on how he plans to invest 75,000 crore rupees that he had set aside for the new energy vertical last year.
RIL has been emphasizing a lot on its commitment towards developing the green energy ecosystem, and over the past year it has corroborated with this intent through various acquisitions and kickstarting several large-scale projects of its own in the same segment. So there could be some specific updates on how does RIL intend to synergize these activities and how does it intend to develop the production, distribution and develop the consumption leg of this entire value chain. At the same time, this would specifically be around for the production of green hydrogen. There could be certain updates on its venture into the solar power segment as well.
Along with the new energy segment, the company may also revive plans of an oil to chemicals demerger, which was shelved last year. Overall, Reliance Industries' 45th AGM is expected to be an announcement-heavy one, with details being given on the acquisitions and investments done so far. As regards today, all eyes will be on US Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's address at the Jackson Hole Symposium. Besides, oil price movement, foreign fund flow, and stock-specific action will guide the markets.
Markets, meanwhile, nosedived on Thursday ahead of the US Federal Reserve's Jackson Hole conference. But now let us move on to a law which was in the news recently. The Supreme Court on Tuesday struck down a provision of the Benami Transaction Prohibition Act 1988 as unconstitutional. It entailed punishment for any Benami transaction. Our next segment talks more about the Benami law.
Enacted in 1988, the Benami Transactions Prohibition Act bars Benami transactions and gives government the right to confiscate Benami property. Benami is a Hindi word which means without a name. A Benami transaction is carried out on a fictitious name, or the real owner buys it on someone else's name to make profit and circumvent the tax laws. The Act says that a Benami transaction is a deal where a property is transferred to or is held by a person and the consideration for such property has been provided or paid by another person. It also includes transactions where the property is held for the immediate or future benefit, direct or indirect, of the person who has provided the consideration. In simpler terms, if A has paid for the property but it is in the name of some other person B, it is labeled as a Benami property. Here, if either A or B are fictitious, the property is considered a Benami property. This also stands in the case of the owner denying any knowledge of holding such property. Cash and sensitive information can also be termed as property under the Act. According to Section 5 of the law, the centre can confiscate any property that has been tagged as a Benami property. But there are some exemptions in the law. When the property is held by a member of a Hindu undivided family HUF on behalf of the HUF or on behalf of his spouse or children, it cannot be considered Benami. Also, if the property is held in a fiduciary capacity, it does not come under the ambit of the law. The major point of contention here is the amendments to the Act in 2016. Let's have a look at the amendments. The amendments that came into effect on 1st November 2016 inserted a subsection 2 in section 3 of part 3 of the Act. It specified that whoever enters a Benami transaction shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term of up to 3 years or a fine or both. This has been termed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. What has the Supreme Court said about the law? Supreme Court bench led by CJI N.V. Ramana on Tuesday stated that the provisions under Section 3 are unduly harsh and declared them unconstitutional. The provisions under Section 5, which allows the government to confiscate the property, were also declared unconstitutional as they were half-baked.
I'm backed by the nation's trusted bank, SBI, the banker to every Indian.
The verdict may have a bearing on several cases of Benami transactions, including the ones filed against former Bihar Chief Minister Lalu Prasad Yadav. That's all for today. Catch the next episode of The Morning Show on Monday.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.